Welcome back. The month of November is concluded, and so we are here again. Jake's over there, creepily sitting in the background. Matt's over there, talking about the things that we thoroughly enjoyed the most in the month of November. Yeah, we're doing this like last time, rapid fire, one at a time. Let's get to it. All right, I am kicking things off, and my first pick for the month of November is Lady Bird, the directorial debut of Greta Gerwig, starring Saoirse Ronan, the Irish actress who's been killing it and everything since she was a kid. This is the time of year when all the big awards movies are coming out, all the big critically acclaimed stuff, because it's Oscar season, baby. So of all those movies that I've seen this month, this was the one I liked the most. It is set in 2002 in Sacramento, California. It's about a girl who's a senior in high school, going through her senior year of high school, applying to colleges, which leads to conflicts with her parents. And basically, it's a very small-scale movie, just about normal people, set over, 8 months or so. It just nails the feeling of high school in the early 2000s. It's set 4 years before I was a senior in high school, but it still really just nails that entire experience. The whole world is so fleshed out. Every character, even the minor characters, are really well developed and so well performed. And I just cared about everyone in this movie so much. It's wonderful. It's just a really wonderful movie, and it's really funny. It is funny as hell, and contains what will probably forever be the best and funniest use of a Dave Matthews Band song in film history. It's nice to see a movie about an independently minded teen character who's not really way smarter than everybody else, and who doesn't have a music taste that's way better than everyone else. And chances are, a year later, she'll realize that, oh, she was kind of mistaken about some of those things. She wasn't as cool and free-minded as she thought. Anyway, this movie is in theaters now. Lady Bird. I adored it. I think everyone will adore it. You should go watch it.
I'm gonna apologize in advance for whatever lack of energy you might perceive in this month's picks, because I'm 2 days out from having a stomach bug. So I'm on the recovery right now. I lost 7 pounds 2 days ago. I want to talk about a movie that came out in November, and it's by the celebrated American filmmaker Richard Linklater. I feel like his past two movies, this one included, which is Last Flag Flying, by the way, have sort of gone by under the radar a little bit. The movie he made before this one was called Everybody Wants Some, and I feel like that's another one that nobody talks about as much as they should, considering how good that one is too. So let's consider this review also a slight recommendation to that movie. You should go check out Everybody Wants Some as well. This particular movie, Last Flag Flying, is a movie based off of a book by Daryl Ponnickson called Last Flag Flying, which is itself a sequel, sort of, to a book called The Last Detail, also made into a movie in the 70s starring Jack Nicholson, by Hal Ashby. Both sets of books and both movies are very, very loosely related, and so you don't have to see the older movie from the 70s in order to watch this one or anything like that. Steve Carell comes to visit his old buddies from the Army, that being Bryan Cranston and Lawrence Fishburne, who he needs them to come with him to pick up his son's body. His son was killed overseas in the Iraq War, and he needs his friends to come help him out, because you find out a little bit later he doesn't really have a close family around to help him out with this. So he enlists their help to do this for him. And it's, in classic Linklater fashion, a sort of overly talky road movie more than anything else. One of the reasons I love this movie so much is just that the performances are so stellar. Bryan Cranston in particular gets a lot to chew on. If you gave him an avatar, he'd probably be sort of the Jack Nicholson-y character from the Hal Ashby movie. Lawrence Fishburne gets a great role too, which I feel like, once again, another actor that doesn't get a lot to do recently, at least I feel. I think he was in John Wick 2, which I haven't seen, so hopefully that's good. To get back to this movie, though, I think Linklater sort of hits a really nice, half heartwarming, half melancholy sweet spot just with every film that he makes that just seems to resonate with me. And he's just consistently been able to hit that sweet spot every time he makes a movie. And this movie does the exact same thing. I recommend people go see it. It's in theaters now.
Hello, folks. Oh, it didn't work. Oh. I was trying to introduce bits to the segment, was going to sit on a whoopee cushion that I myself placed. My first recommendation to get out of the way is a book, just because boring stuff first, right? It's called Cyclonopedia, Complicity with Anonymous Materials. It's written by an Iranian philosopher named Reza Negarestani. He's credited with sort of founding this genre called theory fiction, and it is hesitantly recommended to you because it borrows heavily from just a lot of theory lexicon, a lot of continental philosophy kind of stuff. And if you haven't read, which I also haven't, Deleuze and Guattari's A Thousand Plateaus or Anti-Oedipus, apparently that's a pretty helpful key to understanding a lot of what he's riffing on. But it's fucking awesome because even though it's shrouded in this thing, it is unlike anything I've ever read. And the main story is about the fact that the Middle East is a sentient demon entity that is using oil as Tellurian lube or the devil's excrement to infect the world, and it is actually the remnants of a fallen sun god rebelling against the sun. And there's all kinds of speculative theology. There's a whole demonology segment about possession that's really cool. There's all this bizarre, pseudo-philosophy stuff. And it's in different medium. Like, there's people reading it, and then you're reading excerpts from other people's theoretical texts about it. So it is dense. It is a short book, relatively short, but it is very dense. I understand if that's kind of a stumbling block. It's not for everybody, but it is unlike anything I've read before. And it's, it's like H.P. Lovecraft meets, French philosophy. And lastly, this is the one thing I'll talk about the most because I love it. It talks about the war on terror, but like he literalizes it to mean like cosmic terror. And how, it's just demons fighting each other through the medium of people being infected by war machines and stuff like that. It's so cool. It's called Cyclonopedia, Complicity with Anonymous Materials by Reza Negarestani. Kind of hard to find, but look for it.
All right, I'm back with my second pick, and this one is a television show which just concluded its run. It is all over now, and it is Vice Principals, which was on HBO, created by Jody Hill and Danny McBride, who made Eastbound and Down. If you watch that, it's one of my favorite shows. And this one, it's very kind of similar tonally to that, in that it's really dark and morally complex, and most of the main characters are kind of representable human beings. And so it's not for everybody, but I was one of the people it was for. It's about Danny McBride and Walton Goggins, who gives the performance of the year on TV and should get all the awards. They're two vice principals of a school, and there's been a lot of writing about the show, how weirdly, even though it was written a few years ago, it's become strangely appropriate for 2016 and 2017, about these men who feel entitled to power even though they haven't really earned it, and are monsters to everyone around them trying to obtain that power. And it's just a really funny but also kind of frequently upsetting and unsettling show. And they shot the whole thing together. It's just 18 episodes split over 2 seasons. The second season was all directed by David Gordon Green, and it's done. I'm sad that there won't be any more, but I feel like it went out at its peak. The ending is bonkers and just totally insane. I loved it. I think it's a great show, and if you fit within that narrow, section of people that it is for, then I think you'll really enjoy it.
Next thing I want to recommend is actually a show that premiered on Viceland, which I'm not even sure what that is at this point. I feel like there's so many different ways you can watch media. I think Viceland's a website, but it's also a TV network. But they have a show called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, and I'm a big fan of this show because I'm a huge fan of Hamilton Morris, the reporter that is the host of the show. Season 2 just premiered. I guess the best way to describe him is sort of like a psychedelics journalist or something like that, or alternative drug culture journalist. In his previous season, he covered all kinds of cool topics like the history of quaaludes and psilocybin mushrooms, sensory deprivation tanks. First episode just came out on the 28th, and he's covering a topic about the Sonoran desert toad, this psychedelic frog that people would squeeze from this substance out of their skin glands, dry onto a pane of glass, and then smoke to have these shamanistic experiences. I just find the show absolutely fascinating. I think Hamilton Morris is incredibly smarter even than necessarily the format of the show. I'm happy to see what he's going to do going forward in the future. I'd love to see what kind of published work he does as a writer, because I think that's where he would flourish. He's also incredibly funny. The show is called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, and you can watch it on Viceland.
My second rec is, going from high to low, Samurai Cop, which is a shitty movie that I've been meaning to watch for a really long time, and since I've been going through all of Midnight Pulp's, check it out, catalog, it's on there in the It's So Bad It's Good category. I don't know if any of you guys have seen Miami Connection. If you know what Miami Connection is, imagine if that movie had sort of a huge chunk of its budget removed as well, and then the actors downgraded another level. It's so charmingly bad on such an intense level. Every error you could possibly make as a filmmaker, I don't even know the director's name. I didn't even bother to look it up. It happens there. It's like a list of things to do wrong. And the main actor is, every time, the Samurai Cop is so funny looking. Every time he came on screen, I laughed. It's kind of a sort of Lethal Weapon buddy cop thing with a black and white cop. The black cop gets no characterization. He kind of reminds me of Dean Lerner from Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. And it's a lot of mostly the Samurai Cop beating up people or fucking women, and then somehow his partner's there reacting in close, awkward punch-up shots that last a little too long. It just ends abruptly. Whew. There's horrible fight scenes. It's really, really funny.
All right, my final pick is not a new thing at all. It's not a new movie. It's not a new TV show. It is a fairly old movie from 1983. It is the Philip Kaufman epic, The Right Stuff. It is a 3-hour and 12-minute long movie, sort of about the birth of the American space program, and it is a large, sprawling, epic story. I just saw it for the first time, so I don't want to get too hyperbolic, but it's one of the best movies I've seen in quite a while. And it is an astounding piece of filmmaking that is entertaining all the way through. It almost becomes different movies as it goes on. It starts all about Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier. It's all set in the desert at Edwards Air Force Base, and then it sort of just follows the Mercury astronauts as they are recruited and trained and then go off into space. This sounds pretentious to say, but it's very much a portrait of America in the 20th century. It's mostly set around the 50s and 60s. For a movie of this scale, I was constantly surprised by just like how ambitious and often experimental the filmmaking was, how funny it often becomes. There's a section where Jeff Goldblum and Harry Shearer show up. It's just these nerds recruiting the pilots, and it becomes hilarious. And Caleb Deschanel, father of Zoe and Emily, shot it. He also shot like The Black Stallion and The Natural, and it's one of the most gorgeous movies I've seen in a really long time. It seems to take place only at magic hour and sunset, and it looks incredible. I was riveted for all 3 hours and 12 minutes. I could not recommend it any higher. Plus, it's been referenced and parodied a million times, so you should see the thing where that all began. It's on Amazon Prime now, which is where I watched it. So go stream it on there. Set aside a big block of time. It'll be well worth your while. The Right Stuff by Philip Kaufman. Check it out.
Last thing I want to recommend is this book I read recently called One Child. It's by Mei Fong, who was a journalist for the Wall Street Journal in China. And she just published this in 2015, which was the year that China's one-child policy officially ended. And one of the reasons why I was interested in reading this book is because the one-child policy is one of those things that I sort of knew about, it's kind of just in the background. It's like this policy that, coming from an American perspective, you're just sort of like, this sounds kind of bizarre. How could you possibly legislate the number of children we had? I mean, here in New York, we had a hard enough time when Mayor Bloomberg was around trying to get people not to drink jumbo-sized sodas. So the fact that anybody could dictate how many children you were allowed to have just seems like there would be riots in the streets. So I was just curious to know more about that policy. And the book is great because it's written in a nice conversational tone. It's easy to understand, and it covers just enough depth it covers just enough about the subject where you get like an overarching idea of how the one-child policy sort of permeated through so many disparate aspects of Chinese culture, like transnational and domestic adoption clinics and in vitro fertilization policies, and how it even affected things like the 2008 Beijing Olympics and the Sichuan earthquake that happened as well. Fun fact about this book, I found out that Yao Ming is allegedly the sort of product of China trying to get two former basketball players to breed and create the ultimate basketball player. And guess what? They were a huge success. So all-encompassing, very interesting read, and just overall kind of educational. I totally dug it. You can get this on Amazon. I got it from the library. Notice that Dewey Decimal number on the spine.
This is a movie in theaters currently. It is 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, by Martin McDonagh. I am not a huge ride or die fan of Martin McDonagh. I think he does sort of a very simplistic kind of black comedy really well. And with this, he surprised me because he achieved a sort of depth that I wasn't expecting. Mostly by doing something very simple, but in aggregate with the entire cast, it was really impactful. I mean, the story's about Frances McDormand's character. Frances McDormand is amazing. She's like a force of nature in this movie. She's just pissed the whole time. Her daughter was raped and murdered, and the police did nothing about it, and it's her kind of on this warpath with the police chief initially to get justice for her daughter. The cast of characters is large. You've got Sam Rockwell, Willoughby, played by, what's his name? Woody Harrelson, thank you, Patrick, is amazing. You've got the chain-smoking mom from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is Sam Rockwell's mom. You've got that redheaded kid from fucking Manchester by the Sea. It's so good, and you got Peter Dinklage. Everyone gets so well-rounded. They do something inhumanely awful, and then at some point they do something really, really endearing or empathy-inducing or humanizing, and by the end, you get more than what I consider Mark McDonagh has done in the past. You just get that moral ambiguity to a degree that I like, and the movie ends on a very good note. I like the final line a lot, and again, Frances McDormand is a tour de force, and I think everyone should go see it. And it's funny. Go to theaters and watch it.
And it has Caleb Landry Jones.
Is that yes?
The guy who's having the best year.
Oh, all right. Caleb Landry Jones. Also, Pat just brought this up. That guy's killing it. He's choosing the right goddamn projects. Everything I've seen him in has been great, and he looks weird but handsome.
Okay, and so that concludes another month. Here's proof that we were all. Just sit there. We were all here at the same time in the same room. Can we say it? We maybe shouldn't say it. I'm gonna say it anyway. We're gonna record a test episode of a podcast right now. Okay, we'll be back here next month. Feel free to disagree with us in the comments, and we'll see you with a new video soon.
Hey!